Hey folks, it's Weatherman Sam, man in the big green hat. I'm out on a road trip and I've stumbled across a most interesting area. As a lot of you may or may not know, I'm a poet, I'm a writer myself. And up here in northeast Georgia, there was a man by the name of Byron Reece. And I'm at his farm, and it's kind of a little heritage museum center and whatnot. It has a number of its publications, and so we're going to take the grand tour. The first stop on the tour of the Byron Reece Farm and Heritage Center is, well, the Welcome Center. This is actually the original Reece family home, built in the 1950s, and it's now used as a gift shop, and you can watch a great video on Byron Herbert Reece about his poetry and the songs and his life on the farm. And this is the start of the trail, the poetry trail, that leads down to Mulberry Hall. That's coming up on the right there. I love all these native wildflowers and plants. It's just a gorgeous little place. We're just driving down the road, up here looking for waterfalls, and just happened upon it. It was open, and I always love to stop in and see what's there. I'm a farmer first and a writer second. It's a little stone that sits next to Mulberry Hall, named from the color of paint that happens when you mix leftover paints together. But this is a study that Reece built on the farm here, more of a study than a writing studio. And it had hundreds of his books inside. What a wonderful little place. From chips and shards and idle times I made these stories, shaped these rhymes. May they engage some friendly tongue when I am past the reach of song. Epigraph for one of his books called Bow Down in Jericho, that you can buy here at the Heritage Center. It's a wonderful little museum. And it should be noted, or I would like to note rather, that first statement that I'm a farmer first and a writer second, that he was a successful farmer, and he went on to teach at a number of colleges, but he also turned down a great bit too, because the farm was the most important thing to him. It's what brought him the most joy. Coming up here on the left is the barn. But first we're going to take a minute and kind of backtrack to these little seating areas. All of these have a poem by Herbert Reece. This one's titled Winter Solstice. When the land is white with snow, something chills the moonlit scene, cold so strange no mercury apprehends it by degree, as if feathered fear should go like a condor wing between heaven and earth, and all of time lay defined in whitest rhyme, and always the wind comes on to blow. Let the blackguard wind affright fox and owl that wake at night. Should it rouse a sleeping man, though it shrink his bones to hear how it shrills the solstice air, let him turn to sleep again, turn to peace, remembering that twice divided year is quartered toward the spring. The second one is titled Autumn Mood. The leaf flies from the stricken bough, the aster blows alone, and in the curve of heaven now the wild geese tread the dawn. I wish I had no ears to hear and had no eyes to see what is so beautiful and dear escaping me. These last two I'm not going to read, but I encourage you to look up his work. He has 6 volumes of poetry. And I know a valley, greenwood corn. I know a valley, greenwood corn, where Nautili's waters whirl and run from the deep hills where first at morn it takes the color of the sun, and bears it burning through the shade of birch and willow till its tide pours like a pulse and never stayed, dark where the gulf's edge reaches wide. There, while the twilight spins its dream of light and shadow both, the whir of bats and cry of doves will sing a very liveness of the air. Now that spring is here, now that the years advance to spring and leaves grow large and long, forget each sorry and rueful thing, hearing the wild bird's song. The leaf will fall, the bird will fly, and winter close the year. But oh, put all such knowledge by, now that spring is here. Before we get to the barn, I'd like to take kind of this lake over here to the right, and this is the corn crib. I'll be honest, I know little about this kind of thing, but this goes into detail into how corn was shucked and where it was stored. And this looks like the device that you would put the corn thing in and gotten the little kernels off of it. You see the little spikes here. That's quite interesting. And this looks like where they process sorghum. Our next stop is the smokehouse, but before we get to that, I'd like to share that wagon in the previous video clip at the corn crib was a one-horse John Deere wagon. And it was called a hammer mill on the inside there. Now we're at the smokehouse, which is fairly self-explanatory. It talks about the preservation of meat using salt. And this one used openings at the top to regulate the draft flow, pulling the smoke upward. This would have been the fire pit used to do the smoking. We're being stared down some friends here. We're at the chicken house and animals section of the poetry trail, and Mr. Goat and Mr. Donkey are wanting to say hi. I have nothing to offer you guys. That is a taxidermied well, we got a rooster down here too, and according to the brochure he's taxidermied, but he looks alright. That's the other hens over to the side. Now we're down to here's the chicken coop. There's a note on the wall that says, "Please do not touch the chickens. There are none in here." And the brochure talks about a taxidermied Rhode Island red rooster, but he is nowhere to be found, although there is a rooster happily kind of fluttering around up there by Mr. Donkey and Mr. Goat. This straight ahead here is Wolf Creek. See, the rhododendrons are in bloom. This is the Sellers Memorial Amphitheater, Meditation Rocks. Dr. Betty Sellers was known for her scholarships on Byron Reece. She received an Emmy for her role in the film depicting his life. She herself was a professor and author of several volumes of poetry. This is a great spot, as the brochure notes, to sit and read such things and listen to gorgeous Wolf Creek here. What a beautiful setting this all is. Take the steps down to Wolf Creek here. We are now on the Wildflower Trail, of which unfortunately there are none, except for the rhododendrons that were blooming back there. We'll come back up to the barn for last. There was a video that you can watch in the loft of the barn, and that seems extremely unique to me, and I kind of want to experience that. The little side feeder stream coming into Wolf Creek here. I love this bend in the little rapids. This is the last stop we'll make on this little tour. This is the spring house, which of course is the country refrigerator. And inside here, of course, is a little spring. Way of life has always fascinated me. How different it is from what we experience today. Walk up here to this pavilion. There's a 9-mile trail down the road a bit, named in honor of Byron Reece, and it backs up to Wolf Creek that you can follow along in the Chattahoochee National Forest. Well, I had to come over and see the farm, of course, for what they're growing and demonstration of it, and as you can tell, it's raining. And you can tell we're close to a highway. There's also a trail that connects to Vogel State Park from here. I'm told it's very steep. It runs about 1.25 miles. let's go see this barn. It's a little side shed to the barn. There's various farm equipment being stored in here, and Mr. Ed. A lot of these are farm preparation tools. Plows and whatnot. Cultivator, a middle buster, a harrow. I'll be honest, I've never heard of a middle buster before. I'll never not love learning something new. Here's the main barn. Divided into lots of different compartments. This one is titled Feeding the Family. This talks about canning, and I love this old stuff. Where I hike in the Sipsey Wilderness, I still occasionally come across old bottles such as these. Granted, not in that kind of condition anymore. Across the way, this talks of upkeep, mostly weaving and washing clothes. All these various tools and things that we use for maintenance on the machinery, and old fencing, gas cans. It's tools of the trade. Look at that crosscut saw. Ain't that a beauty? Various tools for plows and for splitting wood, and note outside the door called this one High on the Hog, which is obviously butchering. It talks about sausage making. All the different components. It's titled Beast of Burden. This talks about horses and mules that they used. Using the hand as a unit of measure, and my hand fits perfectly on this diagram. Grabbling in the garden. This is a pea thrasher. Used to separate dry peas from the hull to use for seed or family food. You would pour the dry peas in the hole into the hopper up here at the top. And turn this handle. These are various insects. Mostly the things you wouldn't want to find in your garden. Corn borers, peach tree borers. Look at the size of that tobacco hornworm moth. Excuse me. It's a cider mill. The milk cow. Betsy here's a little hollow. I guess they done milked her today. This goes over the process of milking a cow and creating butter. And this is quite interesting. This actually gives you a little bit of an insight as to how milk is made. And where the cow eats the grass, the cud comes in, the nutrients are absorbed. And if you hear that rain, I know this will date this video, but these rains are courtesy of Tropical Storm Barry here in July 2019. It's about to strike the Louisiana coastline and completely inundate the city of New Orleans. This is the 1947 Farmall Cup tractor, which was owned and used by Byron Reece, farming his land. He bought it in conjunction with his brother. This is titled the Reece Gallery. One wide exhibit. It's like poems of his and songs. What a very cool little experiment. These pages are all set up. With portions of his poem, The Sound of Rain, which fittingly enough, it's raining. And it asks you to complete the poem. And then afterward, in the video, they show you how he completed it. Well, you know I'll have to do this. The sound of rain. If you can hear me over the sound of this rain. I said to myself beneath the roof one rainy night, while fast they fell from clouds with many in store for proof. What raindrops most resemble tell? The answer that my fancy gave, since it could say the thing it chose. I think the rain sounds like a wave that's sucking down the shore it goes. The rain was always like the sea, I told my fancy, try again. And then my fancy said to me, a lot of sticks are like the rain, a lot of sticks cut from the brakes of cane that by the river crowd, and set in rows like slender stakes with top ends reaching to the cloud. And here now is mine. I said to myself beneath the roof one rainy night while fast they fell from clouds with many in store for proof. What raindrops most resemble tell? The answer that my fancy gave, since it could say the thing it chose. I think the rain sounds like stars falling from the sky, settling like dew upon the rose. The rain was always like the sea, I told my fancy, try again. And then my fancy said to me, is not the rain what a river became? Is not their love of rocks as sweet? For every delicate flower knows, to be touched once is to touch one's soul, from ocean waves to mountain peak.